Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by the Adam Meakin, Eli, 10th Man, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Good afternoon.
Hello, hello, hello. Good to have you all. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Like we've been saying, you're going to need R for that.
Enthusiastic lot. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Yeah, you're going to need R for that too. You know, when they presuppose everything and that you're on the sphere with a radius, you're going to need that radius to prove everything, and they don't have it.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Nope. Not without the presupposition of R. Nope.
I was just waiting for exactly that. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
You mean the home address of R? No.
What about any scientific evidence of gravity?
No. No viable hypothesis.
No,
Go ahead.
Well, center of something to the center of something else, is you're going to need R for that.
For the 105-year out of date, you'll need a centre of M1.
Hello.
Yeah, but it's interesting how they, hey, Arvin, it's interesting how they use the out of date teaching until you get to university, and then they tell you, you know what, that's out of date.
Let's go and chat. Thomas Larson says, at Nathan Oakley 1980, plenty of evidence. Really? You just won't look at it. Really? Hope the chemical fire hasn't caused you any health issues. Oh, well, thank you very much, Thomas. We don't get plenty of evidence, though. And it's not that we don't look at it. We're more than happy to look at it. I'll clear the airwaves if you want to come on and present some that you feel we haven't already heard, because I assure you we have. There's a reason it's quiet, and it's not because we don't listen to evidence that's presented. It's because the evidence that has been presented has all been ripped to shreds before a live audience. It was really good. Were you not here? Feel free to jump in and tell us any piece of evidence that you feel proves Earth's sphere or contradicts any question that we've already answered by stating that you need the R value for it. Good luck with that.
Ooh, can I sing a song about R?
No. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
The guy's offering evidence and he won't come on the show? I'm sorry, but is that what I heard?
Claiming we don't look at it. Like, what exactly would you like us to look at? I mean, we're pointed in the direction of things like the cranes on the Black Swan images being bent. And they say that means it's refracted. You're like, all right. So, not geometric then? Not capable of giving you a tangent for your geometry then. Not capable of deriving an R value from it then. And that's what we reply to that. In other words, we do listen to the replies to the black swan that has debunked the R value. Claims of refraction! And we say your refraction's based on atmosphere, sphere-shaped air assumptions, and they need R. So if you need R to refract the horizon with R, you're going to need to measure R, and you measure it with the horizon. It's a paradox. So it's not that we don't listen, we just annihilate the rebuttal. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, they stop at observation. If they speak after that, then you're going to need R.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Once again, atmosphere, gas pressure, sphere-shaped air. You're going to need R for that.
He didn't mention that, though.
Who?
Nathan.
I just said any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container.
Yeah, that's right, not atmosphere.
Because in the pre-show we were talking about a chap from the Washington Post called Matthew Capucci, and Matthew Capucci specifically asserted atmosphere, that would be sphere-shaped air, almost northern, sphere-shaped air. Anyway, he asserted it on a flat plane. It's like the atmosphere would do X, Y, and Z on a flat pizza pie. You're like, what? We don't assert gravity. It's an unproven conceptual medium that has a fourth dimension to it. That's definitely not in existence on a flat plane. Unless, of course, you go to some controlled-up narrative of the Flat Earth Society, who may or may not describe gravity as an upward acceleration of their pizza pie at, coincidentally, 9.8 metres per second. Pretty much exactly as your downward vector gives you. Not that gas does that, because gas expands in all directions to fill the volume it has to fill. That's what it does.
You did ask for evidence, and I was going to say the same thing, and not so much evidence, but the Washington Post guy was told it at school, so that validates it for him. That I think was the level of evidence that we're having brought to us in response to the first guy. It shows you there isn't anything for us to respond to other than somebody coming in with their just so stories that what they learned at school, and that's its validation. Not we're backing it up with I learned this at school and this is what validates it. Just I learned it at school, so it's true. And that's probably why it's quiet, because there isn't anything being presented to us.
He also appeals to consensus. I think he says words to the effect of like we all did. So in other words, all of us on my side poo-pooing this notion that's the obvious and observable nature of our navigatably flat world, well, you who have been told it's like I have will all agree with me here, won't you? So it's appeal to consensus. You were all told it at 4 too. Yeah, so were we, shockingly.
Yeah, there is that arrogance, isn't there, in the response to us, as if we didn't know that we've been going around in this cultish thing since birth. Do you know what I mean? That we weren't all brought up with the same indoctrinated education, that we're not aware of it. There is a naiveness from on that part that they, or maybe it's too difficult again with the cog dis to actually recognise that we've seen these things and worked through them, the things they're avoiding. It's probably an easier thing to just assume that we have no previous education and we just emerged as flat earthers.
But it's telling, the more we deal with these people, the more we hear their projection in what they write and say. And in this instance, Matthew Capucci's writings make it clear that he's a bullshitter. He's just making up that he's run numbers that he clearly hasn't run. But rather than professing any sort of ignorance or actually doing any research, it's easier to project out the stupidity of the people that obviously haven't been to school or ever been told that we're standing on a spherical surface, and me, i.e. Matthew Capucci, in his arrogance that he has, and he has quote-unquote run the numbers. No, you bloody haven't. You know, if you were sat here now, we would all just call you out as a blatant liar, because claiming that you've run the numbers when you've read them off the Flat Earth Society website is just your way of projecting out your own stupidity and ignorance onto the people that you're attacking based on what you've Google searched for 25 seconds, knowing that this is a subject that's currently in the public domain quite prevalently. So what's just lazy journalism? But also projecting out where you have insufficiencies in your own capabilities there, Matthew. And we know it, we see it all the time. You're going to project out your own ignorance directly onto your opponent, aren't you? Yeah, we call that crap out, though.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Who ran the numbers again? What numbers?
Matthew Capucci is the journalist we were... it was actually down to Neil, and so Neil read out almost the full article from the Washington Post, and it's like, listen to this, what an outrage. And then we just sort of went through it, and I got a bit hot under the collar under it. No, I don't know why. It's just like one of those, it's the subject matter of the day on this particular show every day, so why would I get frustrated with it? Well, my frustration is born out of the general, as Adam puts it, arrogance of the people that are in positions that feed the masses with what they think is true. Now, it's kind of sad, because this guy's telling people who are intellectually inferior to him what's what. And I am in no doubt that there's plenty of people who will pick up that article, just read it and take it as read. You're like, so this drongo who's done no real research and is projecting out his own stupidity is going to be taken as read by a lot of people who read this article. What does that say for the people who read the articles?
Well, it's endemic everywhere, Nathan. Lazy journalism, patronising of the reader. I mean, the one that made me just crack my sides this week is, I think it's the LA Times. See, Larry Elder is the face, is the black face of white supremacy. Yeah, they're pushing a narrative.
Hold on, I've got to wrap my head around that before you go further. So that he's the black face of white supremacists.
Yeah.
So he's black. He's black.
Yeah.
He's a black man who's at the forefront of white supremacy. Is that correct?
That's correct. Because he's possibly going to challenge the governor's recall, I think it is, and maybe win as a Republican over there. The only way to attack him is the narratives they've got, which is, oh shit, he's a Republican, therefore he's a white supremacist.
Yep. That's hilarious.
Being in California,
Well, that makes sense.
being from California, that's exactly what's taking place. And they're scared to death because here's a conservative black man, and they got to throw mud at that somehow. I mean, the title itself, if you buy that, you drank the Kool-Aid.
My God, America is still so unbelievably racist, isn't it?
No, they keep we're not
It's even
racist.
worse, though. It's even worse. They got white people saying, "Oh, I can't stand white supremacy." It's like, "Oh, I can't stand my own white rage. I'm trying to understand that, like because I'm white." What?
Hold on, there's a
What the
difference
fuck
between
is-
being white and being a
I'm
white
sorry.
supremacist, Chocolate. Come on. You can't pigeonhole white people as all being white supremacists under the surface. That's a bit unreasonable. Now, come on.
But what I'm saying is they are classing themselves as the enemy while declaring themselves to be white. It's
Yeah,
insane.
That's yeah. So
Right?
there's an attack on racism. Not that racism is a thing.
Well, they're
Yes.
seeing it as the original white
fuck
sin
themselves.
kind of thing.
It's called CRT, critical race theory. They're pushing it in all the schools. They're the ones who are making it an issue. It's not an issue.
Well, it's divide and conquer, isn't it? So, divide and rule. Racism is as good as a subject as any to utilise in that regard.
And it's not
Come on,
really just white
everybody knows
supremacy. They're
that
trying
guilt
to-
is determined through a color spectrum.
How do
Right.
you use?
Hold on,
How
hold
do
on.
you use it on yourself though? That's the
It's-
question. Like
bro.
what he said about guilt. That's what they're calling it, white guilt. White people are
Yeah,
guilty
it's
about
not-
being
it's not-
racist, and so they're actively attacking racism where it doesn't really. I mean, yo.
Okay, we'll get. Hold on,
It's not-
Eli. Just one
it's
second.
not
Just one
white-
second. Just one second. The guy from Discord, is it Alb TV or something like that? Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's not white supremacy. It's mostly white privilege.
same difference, isn't it? White privilege is
Eh,
just the white
yeah,
white
well,
privilege
yeah,
is just
white-
what's expected, and the supremacist is the one that's demanding what's probably already expected anyway, right?
Larry Elder went to one of the toughest schools in LA. He wasn't supposed to turn out the way he did. He went to college. He's written books. He has a radio show. This guy went to an Ivy League school. He is their biggest nightmare to prove it doesn't exist. They have to do this because he's saying to people, get a good education, fight for. There is none of the stuff that the Democrats have put on. It's all there to keep us as slaves. I mean, he proved to them that there is no white privilege, and they don't like it.
It's true. There's no white privilege. There is white noise privilege, though.
I got it.
And I think that the writers of this article are definitely fall under that category.
We'll figure out. Hold on a second. Hold on. We'll figure out why we've segued onto this in a moment. But in the meantime, Julio,
the point was not that.
Hello.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out Julio Pabon. Julio Pabon says, "Are you telling me there is a real life Clayton Bigsby, a black white supremacist?" ? I don't know. None of this makes any sense to me. The first statement from 10th gave me the distinct impression that America is still incredibly racist as a place. There's lots of prejudice against different races there.
No, that's what a
not.
particular party keeps bringing up every election to divide the people. It doesn't exist. It's not. What's the word? Is there racism? Yeah, everywhere in the world. Is it the way they wanted to sell it? That it's everywhere in America and blacks hate whites and whites hate? No.
I see. That was my next question. So what bit isn't actually true? What is he saying isn't real? Well, in this case, the claim that there's widespread racism isn't actually true. The claim that all whites hate blacks and blacks hate whites is not true. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, it worked. I mean, even at a subliminal level, that was my first impression just by your opening statement. So clearly it works. But for that reason, that's why I don't like subjecting myself to the media in this regard. You know, I just don't subject myself to it. I don't know how we've segued onto this subject from the nature of reality, but there we go. Well, I'm sure someone will film me in.
Adam was going to bring it back, so let's see how he brings it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
My point was, we were talking about lazy journalism and perpetuating a narrative, and how lazy and ill-informed you can be to just keep punting a narrative. Now, my point here was, this just exemplifies it. Now, to attack a Republican, yeah, you tend to put you've got a large democratic community in California, so you just put the standard rhetoric out, he's probably a white supremacist. It's that lazy, yeah, and they have thought about it, because look, he is the black face of white supremacy, but it's so ignorant and so ingrained, this narrative, that's how you just attack a Republican, that it's as pathetic. And I think they've taken this down because it's been so heavily ridiculed as to how racist it is. If you look at who the actual backwards racism that's here, you know, and that's my point, that within all the narratives that are speaking to the public, whether it's the Washington Times with this flat earth response or this, there is a disdain for the people they're talking to, an arrogance that they think they're intellectually superior and therefore educating, and basically can get away with telling you anything, that even pizza discs don't fly, or that this black man that's had, you know, his whole life fighting for black rights and speaking for them proudly on radio shows is now, because he's put a Republican badge, you've got to believe he's the black face of white supremacy. And that's the farcicalness of it.
It's farcical within our generation. We had a person claiming to be a black man who became president. We got Supreme Court justices who are black. We've got people who have gifted skills in athleticism. They're making millions of dollars a week on their contract who are black. Where's the systemic racism?
That's just white rage. Sorry.
I was going to nick that joke. That was going to be my lead afterwards. I was waiting for the right pause. Yeah, you could have gone.
I had to be the one to do it.
Well, I don't mind. I'm a quarter black, so I can get away with it.
Chocolate, if
course.
the US military weren't spending their time researching white rage, wouldn't they have had a cleaner pull out of Afghanistan? Because they spent the last few months focusing on that.
A little bit, yeah.
I want to understand white rage.
Okay, so at a base level, just to take this back to flat Earth, I'm sorry, Chocolate. This lazy journalism that's being described by Adam will, in some instances, and it seems from what you've told me, this has been recognised by the public, and there's a bit of an outcry about it, i.e. this is ludicrous, or whatever. I don't care what the outcry is. But therefore people recognise nonsense when they see it. But not always. there are certain facets of your life, including the nature of the ground beneath your feet, that you will just take as read. Doesn't matter who's saying it or how it's being said, it's just part of your language. Therefore automatically assumed. Well, that's what we kind of, I don't want to say the word fight against, but ultimately we have taken it upon ourselves to brace against in our own day-to-day lives. Now, yeah, I've got a show about it, but by the same token, I'm going to say this, it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life, other than if it comes up in conversation or somebody happens to know what I do and they bring it up, and then they normally, in most instances, want to force their already confirmed by everyone around them religious belief onto me. It's like it's not acceptable to have somebody who's not part of that religious belief anymore. They must be converted back into the fold immediately. It's not enough that every single person I know around me believes as I do, because I was told from the age of 4 that Earth's a sphere flying through a sky vacuum. If this person doesn't, they must be convinced otherwise. Didn't you know? Weren't you also told when you were 4 that it was a sphere? My God, what's wrong with you?
You've got, yeah. It's that. I think it's very easy for somebody to not have the wool pulled over their eyes with regards to the last article. It's kind of obvious that he's probably not a face of white supremacy. But actually, cursory reading and re-supporting your already beliefs allows you to then have take on some of the derogatory things about flat earthers. The facts or non-facts in that Washington Post article are a lot easier to be believed. Because it's not so blatantly obvious, but actually they're stating it more. He's doing the numbers, so you're more likely to have the public's conned with that article and believe what's in it than, not to say it's any less blatant, but it's actually easier for the public to read it and accept it and move on. And then, like you say, they've got that article in the back of their brain when they do meet one of these people that they need to have to convert.
I remember a time when I was selling, believe it or not, door-to-door, business to business, copier machines. This was a long time ago. And I remember this guy saying, yeah, but your competition is bringing the machine to let us use for a week. And he says, this is the best model for the size of work we have. So if you're going to do, say, 5,000 copies a week, you get this model. But if you can do 20,000 copies a week, you need to get something more robust. And I said, okay, well, what's your size of, work each week? So then I found one from the company I represented. And he said, yeah, that hands down, it beats yours. And I said, great. How about if I get my copy machine here the same week he has his, and you could test the two against each other? He said, oh, that'd be the best way to know. And I go, I know. And if I win, would you buy from me? He says, absolutely. Well, guess what? He bought from me. So instead of reading an article or a pamphlet from the salesman on the one side only, he decided he was going to test the claim.
Sure, but in the case of copy machines, there's a claim that's being made that's fairly standard and fairly benign. In terms of unique selling points and which one's better, it's not an outrageous claim to say you've got the best copier, even if you haven't. Even if you know that yours is less reliable than your competition's, you can still find something in it that's unique to say it's better, right? So that's not an extraordinary claim to make. Now, in this instance,
he was claiming mine was bad.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in your example, it doesn't have any extraordinary claims in it. Now,
well, the extraordinary claim was he can talk all he wants about his, but the minute he wanted to comment on mine, he became an expert on mine. And I said, well, he's not telling the truth. Why don't you test him and find out? He said, okay, that's the best way to know if he's telling the truth.
Sure. But what I'm saying is, my point was going to be, at the start of that process, there's nothing out of the ordinary to just accept as or take as read or assume in the first instance. For example, that the coffee machine will give you eternal life, or the coffee machine, the copying machine will give you eternal life. That's an extraordinary claim. Would you not agree?
I want some of that coffee.
But you know what I'm getting at. There's no start of that process where you go, what I'm hearing is an extraordinary claim. Now, I'm going to need validation for that. Now, in the case of what we debate here, there is an extraordinary claim. The idea that I have people antipode from my position and we're flying at thousands of miles an hour through an ever-eternal vacuum is an extraordinary claim. I assure you. It's an outrageous claim. But yet it's accepted as fact and accepted as the norm, and then the actual norm you experience is therefore challengeable as the extraordinary claim. Like, we need to prove the base assertion that everything is based upon to begin with, which is the flat plane we actually utilise.
But you covered it already in your show. It's not an extraordinary claim to say that, since you were brought up since 4.
That's my point. It's only not an extraordinary claim because you were told so from an early age, as per Matthew Capucci's article. Don't these people know, like I know, from the age of 4, because I was told, that we live in Narnia? I mean, that we're on a sphere?
To link Capucci and me... Sorry, Tom. Oh.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, you're right. That's literally the only reason anybody believes that. Because they tell you when you have no business even learning that type of thing, right? As if it's your reality, and you just have to deal with it. That's why there's globes all over the place, posters, and it's on your science book, right? So to force feed it into you, so that when you get to a certain age and somebody questions it, you're like, nah, bro, that's reality. What you mean? You know?
Well, that
They give you no
explains.
I'll done 10th. Go ahead, Adam, if you finish chocolate.
Well, yeah, it was just to link 10's analogy. To me, if the guy that's wrote this article is the guy that's going to buy the photocopiers, instead of getting a leaflet off 10 for his competition, right, he's gone to the company that thinks that photocopiers are the new modern evil, and actually we should still be writing things out by hand. And he's got a good appraisal of both machines from that bloke before making his decision. That's the analogy I can see with this Washington article. He's absolutely where he's gone is to a place where you're not going to get the best advice when reviewing Flat Earth. He's off to the Flat Earth Society to then make his decision on this. Well, that's like I say, going off to a hand scribe to ask who's got the best photocopy.
Yeah. A guy who makes handmade fountain pens. What do you reckon's the best photocopier? Photocopiers are evil. Everything should be written by hand.
That's research.
Good one. No, you know what? This is a good conversation, because I was 7 years old when I came to America, and the country I grew up, I can't ever recall seeing a model of the globe.
What was your favorite American song?
Hold on.
Sorry.
My God. If you compare how Matthew Capucci describes being told at 4 years old, and therefore he knows, and then you go and compare how people in cults that have been born into the cult are treated in regards to their beliefs and their understandings, they are identical. There is a parallel between these two things. Some of the things, if you're an outsider, that you listen to from a cult member describing their experience, which they will explain they absolutely understood to be the reality they were in, then you would go, oh, how could that possibly be? How could you not understand something that you haven't been brainwashed with from birth? Well, this is no different. We've all been brainwashed with the idea of standing on a sphere, and therefore we accept it. But you've got to learn that crap, unfortunately. And for the people who don't realise that they've been brainwashed, there's no help, because they just know, right? Well, we all just know, like Matthew says at the beginning of the article. We all just know it already. So from the outset, you're already begging the question that your extraordinary claim is true because you were told so from a child. All right, well, the people in a cult were told that their cult leader was divine or God, and they just accepted that as the case, and then they would go out and do all the slave labour that was requested of them simply because the person that was telling them from birth that he was God, and they damn well knew it. How can you not know that he isn't God? He told me from 4. Weren't you told at 4 that he was God, the guy who's making me into a slave? Well, no, you didn't, because you didn't know any better, and we included didn't know any better when we were told the Earth was a sphere at 4 years of our age.
Well, that's my point.
But even if I didn't know better, some of it still bothered me because my brain works and I think. And I know a lot of people didn't think about these things when they were kids, but I did.
Well, that's my point, Chocolate, because we've shared our stories many times. So when I challenged my teacher in American school, approximately, 6 years later after I came here, he said, look, I don't even believe it, but I have to teach it. So I didn't have that forward to that age to where it was just pounded in me. It was like, well, how can that be? That doesn't make any sense. And I kept asking questions. And of course, I was taking time away from the indoctrination time that he needed. And so finally, when he said, look, I don't even believe it, but I got to teach this stuff. Oh, okay. Well, that was it.
For the benefit of chat, the people who are moderators in my chat have got full permission to ban anybody that they don't want there. So have some respect for the mods, because you will be banned if they choose to, and you're not going to get any sympathy from me if they do. Just so you know. Sorry to introduce a little bit of admin in the chat.
No problem. The mods in chat have been there since they were 4 years old, so they're okay.
So yeah, this is it. We're in a world of lazy journalism and consensus appeal, and that's all we're dealing with. People who are dumbing down their own narrative to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And the thing that saddens me about that is that the ill-informed opinion and regurgitated nonsense of a journalist in the Washington Post will reach the eyes and ears of many and just be assumed to be the case, and just perpetuate the seemingly reasonable behaviour of, well, you're just an idiot who's uneducated and didn't get told when you were 4 that Earth was a sphere. You didn't get told that, did you? Yeah, I did. Shockingly. I exercised a bit of critical thought, and to agree with Chocolate saying, same here, I had the unnerving feeling that something wasn't quite right, and I researched NASA for those reasons. I wanted more. It didn't seem like I had enough to go on. I had this empty feeling every time I read an article or watched a video on Science at NASA channel on YouTube. I'd be like, this doesn't leave me feeling like I've got any of the questions I was hoping to have answered by watching this video presentation. And every time I saw the words artist rendition or CGI presentation or whatever, I was like, well, where's the real stuff? So as much as I wasn't saying, well, that must mean it's a lie, I just felt it wasn't good enough and wanted more. Not because I loved it, but because there was an empty feeling left at the end of it. And that empty feeling has undoubtedly led me to where I am now, appreciating exactly why what they told me on Science at NASA was complete lies. Everything they talked about was taking place in a second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum. So 99% of what they actually said and described was inaccurate, even if it was based on actual observations through telescopes, because what they were describing was heliocentric in nature and based in a sky vacuum. So none of their stories were true. That's why it left me with an empty feeling. That and the nihilism that the heliocentric model actually leaves you with is probably the intended purpose anyway. That empty feeling. You're nothing in a heliocentric model. You're a speck of dust in an infinitely expanding soup of nothing.
That's what Carl Sagan told Johnny Carson on the show, and he was like proud of it.
Yeah, and it's a sad way to spend your time on the anti-flat earth side of this argument. I hear far more joyous descriptions of their experience into this realm of discovery, this realm of possibility. That would be the flat earth realm that you've been living on your entire life, as opposed to the anti-flat earth pain that I see non-stop. I think if you're going to live out your life that way, you're going to have a miserable existence, and then it's going to be over. And you think, that's pretty sad. Your time is extremely finite here. Try and appreciate the joy that the world's got to offer. You know, I went out to a forest with my kids today to pick wildflowers, experience the sights and smells, and the joy of having kids around me. It was fantastic. That's every day. That's what life's like when you enjoy life. Well, I don't see much enjoyment from the anti-flat earth side of this argument. I see pain. That's all I see, in fact.
Yeah, there's a reason for that pain, though.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it goes further than that because most of them are atheists. And so when you tie it into a creator, I mean, most people are open to the idea that creation needs a creator. And most people, many times in their life, will look up and talk to God and say, are you there? I want to know you. If you're there, this goes on through life at different ages for many people in all different cultures. But the anti-flat earthers can't have even that because their whole thing is, wait a minute, if there's a creator, then there's probably some responsibility for me to kind of look for him or live a life that I might have to give an answer to down the road. Just very cursory stuff. I'm not even bringing in Christianity or anything. Just the knowledge that there is a creator is all I'm bringing into this argument. And they can't have that because maybe they have to live a different life if there is a creator. So the cog dis exists, yes, but that's also, why does it exist? Because they can't have a creator because then they're no longer the boss.
Very irresponsible.
I don't know anyone who's under the impression that nothing has a purpose here on Earth. I mean, they talk about the food chain. They say everything is connected. You don't kill this bug because there's a purpose for it, right? There's nothing that doesn't have a purpose. Well, I don't know anything that doesn't have a purpose that wasn't purposed by something.
Rumpus.
What?
I said Rumpus doesn't have a purpose.
We've been joined by our Ireland correspondent Brian Slogic at 33,000 feet. How you doing, Brian?
Hey Nathan, hey everybody.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
How are the skies up there?
What's up, man?
Excellent.
Yo, what's up, Brian?
Hey, like.
Are you flying right now?
Nah.
I'm about to say.
No, but Brian does have his nose up on the anti-flat earthers by at least 2 degrees.
Just round out the creator discussion. So we do have a creator. There must be a creator, and the reason is simple. To assert that nature created itself is a violation of the first law of thermodynamics. Therefore, there can only be a creator at the beginning of that process. Nature cannot create itself. Therefore, there must be a creator. To expand on that slightly, as it's reached a dumb silence, there are two principles, the ontological primitives. Either nature created itself, or there was a creator. In order to answer, and there is only one or other of those answerable, you can't have both at the same time, they are mutually exclusive. Therefore, if you take into account that the one side of that would be the atheist's position of nature creating itself, violates a law of nature, you are only left with the other option. There was a creator. There is a creator. That is the only other option.
Yeah, if there wasn't a creator, we wouldn't have the first law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, there's no possible other logical alternative that can possibly be put forward.
Not without violating natural law, no. Correct. Or employing an infinite regress fallacy, which we're not going to get into now.
So you mean to tell me the rocks on the mountainside are not my cousins? Damn.
That's heliocentric narrative also. So the claim that you have supernova, stars imploding, and then as they do so, they're getting ever more dense and creating the fundamental elements that exist in nature, and then exploding out into nature to then be reformed through gravitational accretion and distributed throughout the universe. That idea that rocks are our distant cousins is just part of a heliocentric story that's born out of the Big Bang in violation of the first law of thermodynamics.
Oh man, she sounded so sane when she said it. I was hoping it'd be true.
And if she said it here, and we said to her, that's a violation of the first law of thermodynamics, what do you think she'd say?
Blah 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 blah. Of course,
I got a cousin named Rocky.
I'll tell you what she would do. She would go, click, and you would go, hello, hello? Are you there?
Pretty much.
That's exactly like, did you guys hear of this this professor that QE planned a debate with over at 24/7 Flat Earth Discord? And it was planned a week in advance, or maybe it was a week and a half. And she agreed, and then she showed up, and then they got into the conversation, and then he asks, well, can you give me like, I think he started to get into the scientific method and what a viable hypothesis is. And then all of a sudden she didn't have a good connection, and she couldn't connect because she didn't really understand how Discord works. And she never came back, even though she had said, yeah, let's plan to redo this next week. Haven't heard since. And that's exactly what
that tells me she's intelligent.
Yes, it does.
Studied the situation and got the hell out of Dodge. Very wise.
There was another guy, wasn't there, that QE had a very similar thing with. Another professor who came to have a debate, and the professor suddenly couldn't hear what he was saying and all this kind of stuff. He says he's going to have to come back and reschedule it. And he said he'd be in contact to reschedule it.
I'm going through a tunnel. that old shit, right?
Yeah. He's having a debate, but he's also driving through tunnels. Yeah.
We get that here sometimes. I do sometimes wonder how, there'll be, I'll make an example of this, a mic issue at the most inappropriate moment when you're getting an answer or they're pushed into a corner. Suddenly you get where things a little bit wrong. You can hear them, but obviously things are cutting out, and you're like, oh, I can't quite hear what you're properly. You know what I mean?
You're cutting out.
Are you doing that on purpose?
I'm doing that intentionally. Yeah, of course I'm doing it intentionally. I'm just saying that often our opponents will suddenly have technical difficulties. A guy the other day said that he'd been involved in a thunderstorm. This is what he said. He said, I didn't hear what you've just said. I had a thunderstorm and everything cut out. Now here, right, I don't know about thunderstorm, but I've certainly got a coffee machine that sprung a leak, and it uses a huge amount of electricity. And when, obviously, the water comes in contact with that, everything shuts down. And in my case, if I was just on my iPad, in other words, I didn't have dozens of programs running and all sorts of hardware running, just my iPad connected to Discord, minimum, it would take me 10 minutes to get back online, get the Wi-Fi all back up and running, just to get back onto the server would minimum, I would say, 10 minutes. Yeah? Yet this guy, it was not even 5 seconds after the question was put to him. Apparently he'd had a full-on blackout and then reconnected with perfect clarity. That's the kind of crap we have to deal with.
And he was on a phone or a tablet anyway, more than likely. So, I mean, he wouldn't have lost much Wi-Fi because he surely has Wi-Fi from his provider, his telephone provider. So if his home Wi-Fi went out. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, this isn't really sequitur, but I'll never remember that this happened if I don't mention it now. Remember when Kosho was on, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm having a conversation with Blue Marble. Is it Blue Marble?
Oh, his daddy."
He's like a father to me.
He's like, I'm on the phone with him right now. And then later on, push comes to shove, he's like, no, it was his voicemail. What? Come on, bro.
When he said the words, and I cut this out and put it in one of the videos, I'm speaking with him now. That's what he said. Quote. So he told us he was speaking to him. And then went away, like he was talking to him, and then came back. And then later on in the conversation, much later on, I wasn't talking to him at all. Just went through to voicemail. Well, then you weren't talking to him. You're just a liar. Because they just make up any old crap to get away from whatever we're talking about. See it all the time when I watch other people's discussions on other platforms. There's just people talking through whatever the actual claim is and then it'll kick off into who's interrupted who, and then the question will change from the flat earther asking a question that's difficult to why the flat earther hasn't answered a question that's obviously taking precedent at that point through the chaos.
There's a Simpsons sketch I've seen several times, but they use the same one many times, but they might use a different subject to create it. But one I saw was there was this Homer was at this fair, and there's a guy with a desk in front of him, and he's saying, "Buy one of these magic lips, the candy of 1,000 uses." And Homer says, "Yeah, like what?" "Well, you can use them for your own lips." And he said, "Okay, what other one?" Right? The man goes, "Is that the time? I gotta go." And he starts pretending he's walking down the stairs that's behind the desk. He starts dropping in his height, bringing down his knees, pretending he's walking down the stairs a zigzag down behind the desk. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, like the guy in the chat earlier that I pointed out. We have loads of things to contest your housekeeping questions. You just don't listen to them. Okay, give me one. Well, here's my magical stairs that I'm walking down. Oh, shout out to shout out to Jules Luds. He says the house of cards will fall and all will see the truth. I appreciate your optimism, but I don't think so. I think even if they did, that it would need to be long established as just recognised by everybody anyway. You know, in other words, if we're gonna take your optimism to be the case, then we have to assume that we're at the violent opposition stage to it. You know, we're quite some far distance away from the accepted as always been true stage. But we might get there eventually. But by the time it does, it'll have diluted, dissipated, filtered to the point where, as I say, the general public will just kind of be going, if you ask the man on the street, is the earth flat? And they'll be going, well, everyone knows that anyway, obviously. You know, and I don't think that's going to come quickly. I doubt, it may come in our lifetime, I don't know. Anybody on the panel or Discord server got an opinion on this?
No, I think you're right. I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think it'll ever happen. Because give me an example of when it did.
Well, I think it could, but it would just be.
Let me expand on that.
It would be the same control structure. If they happen to say Earth's flat instead of Earth's a sphere, it's like in 1984 when the guy's being tortured, and he says, "Do you not think it's beyond our mathematicians' capabilities to have the sun, the stars close or far away?" In other words, they're basically saying within the power or control structure, within the matrix, if you will, the people who are controlling the narrative may well decide at some stage that, yeah, the general populace actually now appreciates that the Earth's flat, so we need the paradigm to be geared in that direction now. Well, will it generally change how that matrix structure works if the perception of the people within have a flat plane rather than a spherical one? Well, in the same way the torture scene makes clear, it's just like, well, that'll be down to whoever says it. But what does it represent? Well, for me, what it represents is an opening of my landscape. And I don't mean in literal terms, in terms of what I look at. I just mean in terms of the things that are possible to look into and discover, find things out about. Well, that opening of my surroundings is a joyous thing to me. But I think that's actually terrifying to for the most part, to most people. So unless it was wrapped up in pretty much the same control structure, i.e. everything was as it was, but rather than being told at 4 years old that Earth's a plane, you're told something else that's very much going to be a controlled structure and, you know, a belief or a religion or a philosophy that's turned into a religion, whatever. It's still going to serve the same ends, is what I'm saying. So therefore you say, well, if it's not relevant about what shape of the plane we're standing on is to the general populace, so long as it's wrapped up in a control structure, what's the sentiment that Jules, with a very generous super chat, is actually hoping for? And from my perception, I'd hope for the world to be more open-minded, more expansive, a bit more critical sometimes of other people who lie. And I just don't think that that's ever feasible. I just think that for the most part, most people are dumb. You know, the general populace, they don't want that. They want to be in a controlled structure. They want discipline and order that's foisted upon them without them having to give it much concern. They want the decision to be made for them. That's why we've got government and control structures in the first place. Or we assume, because that's how our history's told us they've come to pass. Probably not the case. But what I'm saying is, most people are happy with that. You know, even with the sphere paradigm, most people are happy with that. So unless it changed for the reasons that the flat earthers actually succeeded in pushing this information out into the populace, so it was just generally accepted anyway, then it would change in the narrative of the philosophers that we call scientists currently. But that wouldn't necessarily change how we're being controlled, how the taxes work, how the roads are maintained. It probably wouldn't change any of that. It just mean that people appreciate that they're on a flat plane rather than being told they're on a spherical one. But they wouldn't get any of the benefits that I see for being in a minority where I'm fighting against people who are told things and don't realise it, versus me saying, well, I don't actually know the answer to that. Isn't that wonderful? And like I say, I don't think you can pass that on to anybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was struggling to get your point until about 30 seconds when you tied it back in to your initial to the main point that you were trying to make. That the House of Cards did come down. People are saying, no, it didn't. That's what happened. So people aren't going to critically think for themselves. That's how it's probably always going to be. Now, I think that we have a responsibility because sometimes. Okay, so I was put in a position, right?
Stop selling your vanity short, guys.
No, I didn't sell it short. Read the book, the good book. Anyway, so I was talking to my stepson, and I brought him out to see the red moon. And he goes, wow. And he knows what I talk about. So he said, you know what? If the sky is not what they say it is, then what is it? Because, it's amazing what it is. But if it's not that, then what is it? And at this point, I knew that I was at a very sensitive moment where I couldn't just give him any old answer. I had to be very careful. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not the arbiter of what that is. It could be anything for all we know. You can think what you like. That's fine. But what I want to tell you is that you can literally think what you want and no one can take that away from you. That's the only answer I could give him that I thought, was merciful.
Yeah, akin to saying I don't know, but not knowing doesn't mean that you're not going to be the one to find out. Now, when I do the same with my kids, I tell them, there's all sorts of different versions of what the sky is, and then I rattle off a few examples. And that's as good as I can do, and say, well, you don't have to pick one. It doesn't mean that's what it is. You might be the one to find out what it is for all you know. Isn't that wonderful? We don't really know. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer, especially when it comes to the moon. My eldest asks me every time she sees it, well, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. Isn't that wonderful? Maybe you could find out one day. But that joy I can give to my kids really easily, right? But when we talk about pushing people off that hill, right, they get to the bottom and suddenly their only option is to be an anti-flat earther in the vain hope that they're going to become a globe believer. Well, for some people, you have a responsibility to assess whether or not that's going to be beneficial to them. Why fight to get someone out of the matrix if all they're going to find when they get out is misery and they were quite happy in there? Just leave them to it. Why push them down the hill? Now, if on the other hand you recognise a twinkle in their eye that tells you this person's got a little bit of critical thinking about them, then they might actually see some benefit to it. Because the benefit of just knowing something that was secret until you told them the Earth's actually flat, well, that's pretty short-lived. The dopamine rush doesn't last that long. So what else are you giving them? Well, if most of what you're giving them is actually downside and it's going to negatively affect how they interact with society, when they were quite happily interacting, that you're just going to inflict the pain that we see from our anti-flat earth counterparts. They want to be back up where that guy was before you pushed him down the hill or her down the hill in regards to their understanding of the nature of their reality. They just got on with life and didn't think about it, and you decided to come along and say, you do realise that you're now going to have to contemplate how everything around you is potentially a lie, and that you need to exercise critical thought that you didn't need to up until this point exercise, and you had no desire to either. You were quite happy being told what's what. Yeah, I'm going to come along and say, from now on, you really should be exercising really strenuous critical thought about all these things that you took to be true, because they're probably not. And you go, why have you done this to me? What benefit? I didn't want to be spending my day exercising critical thought. I was happy in the sheep pen. Why did you kick me out?
That's why the people who could be honest and show the world what show the population of the world what the world really is, as opposed to continue on with the facade of it being a globe. They know that in general, at least 19 out of 20 people are lazy. So that's 19 to 1. That'll be on their side, because they know those 19 people will not do research, will just want to be told whatever it is from the news. They don't want to, they'll see it on their feed, on whatever social media they use. They don't want to have to think about it. And they know that they can just drip feed this thing, and they can then make a statement in some years' time, as opposed to an admission. And then they don't lose any ground, because the very people who were laughing at us for years, like their kids end up kind of just accepting that it is what it is, and they just carry on then with their paradigm. And it's down to, it's not, you could say it's their fault for being the way they are and doing what they do and manipulating, but it's just as much everyone else's fault for being so lazy about it. I mean, you can point out the truth to people all day long and they'll attack you, but you give them a nice lie and they'll be friends with you. They'll buy you a beer.
Right. Sorry to just cut you off. I'm going to read out Jules Ludd's massive super chat. So 319, I think it's Australian dollars. Wow, massive super chat. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. No matter who is correct, God's truth will reign regardless. Bless all of you who are at least trying to open their eyes of the glazed, or open the eyes of the glazed. Indeed, I may not be one of them. Oh, I really appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. What I consider to be God's truth would be the world around you, as opposed to the stories and narratives of men that you just believe because they've told you so. And God's truth, the world around you, is quite spectacular and beautiful and full of mystery. So, yeah, but you can never necessarily... You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can't open the eyes of the glazed, as you put it, Jules. But I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much.
I'll tell you one thing. Why do they have to put the little disclaimer now? This is an archaic viewpoint of the way people looked, and that's on everybody's channel. What's happening is the process of change. So here we are battling it every day. We have converts we don't even know about. I mean, they see the arguments, they decide on their own what they're going to believe. And so you can see the forces from outside saying we need to shut this down. So they hide the algorithms, hide everything, and they have to put little labels. And what's going to happen is we're birthing a new generation. And so everyone I've talked to, they've shared it with their kids. Those kids are young now. Those kids are going to grow up being future Nathan Oakleys and Brian's Logic and 10th Man's and Chocolate and Eli and Adam and Neil, everybody, Arwen. I can't mention everybody, but that's we might be a small tag team now, but that next generation is thousands of people like this that do this what we do every day, and then they're going to affect. And so you just got to give it time. It's not going to happen in our generation, if we even are here. But if we are, it will happen because it's growing and they need to shut it down.
With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
lucky day.